I'm 28 years old, female, and I work as a dentist. A while back, I matched with this guy named Gene, also 28, on a dating app. We went on a few dates, and it didn't take long before I started noticing some things that really rubbed me the wrong way. Our first date was at this trendy, packed bar. Gene ordered round after round of pricey cocktails, not just for himself but for his friends too, and he didn't even pause to ask me what I might want. I stuck with just water, and he made a comment about it that didn't sit right. He said something like, "Don't worry, I like a girl who knows her limits, it's cute," and then threw me a wink. To him, maybe that was supposed to sound charming, but to me it felt condescending, like he was looking down on me rather than trying to be sweet. The second time we went out, it was to a loud nightclub. I spent part of the night waiting in line for drinks while Gene spent most of his time chatting up other women. When I came back balancing our drinks, I saw him leaning in close to some blonde in a tight dress, clearly flirting. He didn't even notice me standing there for several minutes. When he finally reached for his glass, he didn't bother with a thank you. I told him I felt a little uncomfortable with how he was acting, and his response was basically that I should loosen up and learn how to have fun. By the third date, I was already questioning things, but I agreed to dinner at a regular sit-down restaurant. The whole night he dominated the conversation, bragging about his family's wealth and all the big plans he supposedly had with their business. He barely asked me anything about my job or personal life. Then he tossed out a line that really stung. He smirked and said, "Dentistry, huh? That's adorable. My mom always wanted me to marry a doctor, but I guess a dentist is close enough. She'll be thrilled." It was the way he said it, like my career was somehow second class, that made it clear just how differently we saw the world. I'm someone who enjoys quiet nights in, a book, maybe some music. Gene, on the other hand, clearly thrived on being the center of attention at parties, clubs, and bars. There's nothing wrong with that lifestyle, it's just not what I want for myself. I've built a solid career working at a respected hospital, and I take pride in that. Gene's career was essentially waiting to inherit his dad's company. After those 3 dates, I stopped responding to his texts. At first, he sent a few casual messages, but when I didn't reply, they turned bitter. The last one he sent me called me boring and uptight, and he accused me of being jealous of girls who know how to have a good time. A few months later, I ran into him again at a friend's birthday party. This one was held at a quiet upscale lounge, my kind of setting. Gene spotted me across the room and gave me this little smile before walking over. To my surprise, he apologized for the nasty texts, blaming them on a bad day and too much tequila. That night, he turned on the charm. He showered me with attention, even acting like he remembered things I'd told him about my work, though he got some of the details wrong. Still, we spent most of the night together and ended up leaving at the same time, though only as friends. Soon after, he asked me out again and suggested dinner at a nice restaurant known for its food and wine, much more my style. He told me, "I want to make it up to you. I know I messed up before." I decided maybe I'd give him another real chance. Things moved fast after that. Gene went all out with big romantic gestures, lavish gifts, fancy weekend getaways. At first, it was impressive. But after a while, it started to feel over the top, like he was trying too hard to win me over with money. He surprised me with a designer handbag, the kind I never would have chosen for myself. When I seemed hesitant, he brushed it off and said, "Every woman deserves a little luxury." Our personalities kept clashing. He teased me constantly about being an old lady for liking early nights at home. He'd joke, "You'll turn into a pumpkin if you're out past 10, Cinderella." Still, we told each other we loved one another. About a year in, we moved in together. Gene picked out the apartment, a luxury high-rise in a trendy part of town. I had wanted a quieter place closer to work, but he waved off my concerns, insisting, "Babe, you'll love the views, and the amenities are insane." Once we started living together, I really got a sense of his everyday habits. He spent hours glued to video games, hit the gym occasionally, and went out partying every single weekend. He'd come home late, usually waking me up, and once even brought a group of loud friends over at 3 a.m., knowing full well I had an early shift the next day. His work life was another eye-opener. Technically, he worked for his dad's company, but in reality, Gene showed up at the office maybe twice a week, if that. The rest of the time, he was working from home, which often meant not working at all. It was clear he only had the position because of who his father was. He bragged openly to his friends about how he had it made, how he didn't need to put in much effort. His father was still running things but kept reassuring Gene that one day the business would be his. Gene liked to say that his business degree proved he was prepared for it. I tried bringing up the subject of his work a few times, but he always shut me down. He'd tell me that as long as the money was coming in, I had nothing to worry about. Once, he added, "You wouldn't understand the pressure of a family business anyway. It's not like pulling teeth, sweetheart." I figured since he was at least contributing financially, I'd leave it alone, even though it all felt wrong to me. One night after a long, draining shift at the hospital, I came home to find him sprawled on the couch with a video game, the place a total mess. I asked him if he'd had a chance to review some important documents about our lease. Without looking up, he waved me off, saying he'd deal with it later and that I was stressing him out during his downtime. Then he gestured at the screen and said, "Can't you see I'm in the middle of something? This is important too." I just bit my tongue and didn't respond. Even though I tried to brush things off, the frustration was starting to build. My parents are in their early 50s, and I've always felt it was right to help them out financially. I could afford it, and honestly, I wanted to. I pitched in for their retirement savings, paid a couple of their bills each month when I could. They told me over and over that I didn't need to, but I kept doing it anyway. Jean and I had always kept our money separate, and I never mentioned the support I gave my parents because I didn't think it mattered. He never told me how he spent his money, so I figured it worked both ways. A couple of months ago, though, he found out. My parents had been over for a visit and casually mentioned that I had covered their electric bill. Jean's mood shifted immediately. During the visit, he started making these little jabs about how lucky my parents were to have such a generous daughter. He kept topping off his wineglass, clearly annoyed, and brushed me off whenever I tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. Later that night, after my parents left, he exploded. He slammed a beer bottle down on the counter so hard it startled me. He said I should have talked to him first before sending them money, accusing me of hiding things and sneaking around behind his back. He told me flat out that I needed his permission before giving my parents another dime. According to him, it wasn't just about money, it was about respect, about being a team. "You don't make those kinds of decisions without me," he said. That was the breaking point for me. We got into a huge argument. I told him he had no right to control what I did with my earnings. I made my own money, and I didn't owe anyone, including him, an explanation for how I spent it. I reminded him that I had never questioned the way he threw cash around, like when he covered expensive bar tabs for his friends every weekend. At least my money was going towards something meaningful, not being blown on what I called spoiled frat boy habits. Jean didn't back down. He claimed that my money was our money now and that he had just as much say over it. He even threw out the line, "What's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine, that's how partnerships work, babe." We didn't speak for days after that fight. I ended up sleeping on the couch, feeling more uneasy about him than I ever had before. Eventually, he apologized, but it felt shallow. He framed it like it was a simple misunderstanding, not him trying to control me. He said, "I'm sorry we fought. I get worried about money. It's a family thing." To smooth things over, he gave me a cheap bracelet that didn't even suit my style. I accepted it, but I still felt unsettled. A few weeks later, I brought up the idea of starting a savings plan for a house. Jean laughed at me. He said we didn't need to bother because his parents would probably gift us a property once we got married. He dismissed my idea of a quieter suburban home by saying, "You wouldn't want to live in some boring suburb, would you? You'd miss the city life." He didn't even ask what I wanted. Not long after, he proposed. Jean went all out with a very public, over-the-top proposal at a fancy restaurant, surrounded by his friends. He got down on one knee with a massive diamond ring and asked, "Well, my name, are you going to make me the happiest man in the world or what?" I had so many doubts in my heart, but with all those eyes on me, I felt cornered into saying yes. The next few months were a blur of wedding planning. I threw myself into it, pushing aside that lingering fight. Jean barely lifted a finger to help, leaving most of the decisions to me and his mother. Still, he kept criticizing our choices, saying they were too traditional or not classy enough. He didn't want a string quartet, saying it was so stuffy, and insisted on hiring a DJ who could get the party going. He demanded a massive ice sculpture, which I thought was tacky and unnecessary. We set the wedding date for 6 months after the engagement, and during that time, we continued living separately. 3 days before the wedding, actually, the night before he was supposed to check into a hotel nearby, Jean showed up at my place with a document in hand. He handed it to me and told me to sign it quickly. He was visibly nervous, tapping his foot and avoiding eye contact. "It's just some legal stuff," he muttered, "nothing to worry your pretty little head about." At first, I assumed it was a prenuptial agreement. But when I started reading, my stomach dropped. The contract had 3 main clauses. Once we were married, I wouldn't be allowed to give my parents or any family member money. If we had kids, my parents wouldn't be allowed to be alone with them until the kids turned 18. If Jean or his parents deemed it necessary, I would have to cut off all contact with my family. Jean explained that the contract was just a precaution because of our fight about my parents' bills. He said his father was retiring soon, meaning more money would be coming his way, and he didn't want my parents thinking they were entitled to any of it. We need to protect our assets, he told me, adding that families can bleed you dry if you're not careful. When I questioned the clause about kids, he said it was just in case my parents tried to manipulate them against us. His tone implied he thought my parents were capable of turning our own children against him. As for the no contact clause, he brushed it off as a worst-case scenario, telling me not to worry about it. The way he spoke, you would have thought it was completely normal. He slid the pen across the table, practically pushing me to sign. And I did, I signed it. But I made sure to keep a copy for myself. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. My brain wouldn't slow down, and I lay awake going over the contract again and again, reading every word like I'd missed something. The next morning, the wedding day itself, I forced myself through the motions. I smiled for pictures, got my hair and makeup done, and pretended like everything was fine. On the wedding day, I slipped into my dress and walked down the aisle, but it felt like I was moving through a dream, almost like I was watching someone else's life play out, not mine. When it came time for me to say my vows, I did something no one expected. I asked my maid of honor to hand me my purse. People probably assumed I had written my vows down. Instead, I pulled out the contract. The air in the room shifted instantly. Guests looked confused, and Jean's parents went pale. His father even started to rise from his seat. I opened the document and began reading every clause word for word, loud and clear, so there was no chance of anyone misunderstanding. When I finished, I told the entire room that Jean had forced me to sign it the night before. Then I looked straight at him. My voice didn't shake. I told him I wasn't in love with him. I called him a man-child, a selfish, controlling, entitled brat, and said I wasn't going to waste another minute of my life tied to him. I turned to his parents and called them privileged jerks who had raised him to think this behavior was normal. I tore the contract into tiny pieces and flung them at Jean's face. One scrap landed in his mouth, and he sputtered, choking, and trying to shout after me. He yelled my name, demanding, "What the hell are you doing?" I didn't stop. I reached for my parents' hands. They looked shocked, but they squeezed tightly, grounding me in that moment. Together, we walked out of the venue. I never once looked back. We got into my parents' car and drove to their house, my childhood home. The ride was silent, except for my mom's quiet sobs. My dad kept his arm around her, murmuring words to calm her down. When we got home, I peeled off the wedding dress and slipped into an old sweatshirt and sweatpants. I scrubbed the makeup off my face until it felt like my skin could breathe again. Then I sat down with my parents at the kitchen table. My dad told me he'd never been prouder of me. My mom was still crying too hard to get out much, but she nodded through her tears and whispered, "We love you, honey. We'll always be here for you." I've been staying with them ever since. That same evening, Jean called me, screaming down the phone. He cursed at me, called me a gold digger, manipulative, and said I'd ruined his life. I hung up. Not long after, his mother left me a voicemail, sobbing. She said I had humiliated her family, that I had mocked them in public. According to her, the contract should have been dealt with privately, not exposed like that. She called me ungrateful, classless, and said I'd brought shame to their name. And that's why I came to Reddit, because I couldn't stop asking myself, was I really wrong here? Update 1. After sharing my story, I wanted to give a quick update. Most people said I did the right thing, and deep down, I believe that too. Maybe I was impulsive, maybe dramatic, but that's not the same as being cruel or selfish. If anything, the more I think about that argument over the electric bill, the more I know I made the right choice. But of course, Jean and I still had to sort through the financial mess of a cancelled wedding. The caterers especially were a nightmare. Jean tried to pin the costs on me, insisting it was my fault, saying he was losing so much money because of what I did. He even threatened to sue. I told him to go ahead, I wasn't scared. Yes, I lost money, but honestly, I'd pay double if it meant avoiding a life shackled to him. Update 2. After a lot of back and forth and lawyers stepping in, we finally agreed to split everything 50-50. It was expensive, but it's done. That chapter is closed. Jean has since blocked me. I only realized when I tried to message him about picking up the rest of my belongings. Emotionally, I'm all over the place. I feel relief, but also a strange emptiness. For years, I convinced myself we were in love. Now that it's over, there's this hollow space where that belief used to be. And I hate to admit this, but part of me misses him. I know how insane that sounds after everything he did, but heartbreak isn't logical. Friends have been amazing, sending texts, calling me strong, telling me I'm fabulous. And while it helps in the moment, it doesn't really change the way I feel inside. I'm numb. I don't talk about it much in person because I don't want to make things awkward. So I'll just say it here, if anyone has advice on how to navigate this kind of heartbreak, I'm open to it. Update 3. It's been a month since the wedding. I went back to our old apartment to collect the last of my stuff. Gene wasn't there, but his friend Troy let me and a friend of mine inside. Troy seemed uneasy, throwing out little comments about how I'd overreacted and ruined a good thing. He told me Gene was really torn up over this and that he really loved me. While packing, I noticed some of my things had been tampered with. A favorite book had pages ripped out. A picture frame was smashed. I'm almost certain Gene did it, but I stayed quiet. I just wanted to get out. Before we left, Troy handed me a folded note. He said Gene wanted me to have it, though he didn't look thrilled to be passing it along. It was an apology letter. Gene wrote that he was sorry for what he'd done and how he had treated me. He said I had always been even-tempered and shy, traits he claimed he admired. Reading his words stirred something in me, though not in the way he probably hoped. Reading Gene's letter left me with a knot in my stomach, mostly because it showed he never truly understood me. He admitted things must have been pretty bad for me to react the way I did, but then he framed it as if we were both immature, saying we cared more about being in a relationship than we did about each other. He ended by saying he hoped someday, when we were both in a better place, we could meet up again. The letter was bittersweet, but in my heart I knew the damage was permanent. His apology felt sincere in parts, but he still dodged the real issue, his disrespect and his constant need to control me. It felt like he was trying to make it seem like we were equally at fault, and that just wasn't the truth. I crumpled the note in my hands, then smoothed it out again, not sure what to do with it or how to feel. After that, I moved into a new apartment near my parents' house. It's smaller, nothing flashy, but it's cozy, quiet, and safe. Being closer to them brings me comfort. I can drop by for dinner or a chat anytime I feel lonely. I decided to throw myself into work and give myself space to breathe. I was sad, yes, but also hopeful. For the first time in a long time, I was genuinely looking forward to being single. Update 4, 6 months later, my life looked completely different. I got promoted at the hospital and became the head of my department. I think a lot of that had to do with finally being able to focus. Without Gene's constant drama draining me, I poured my energy into my career. My social life also blossomed. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and even went out dancing, something I never would have dared to do while I was with him. My bond with my parents grew even stronger too. I still help them financially, but now it feels like a choice, not a battle. We share dinners regularly, and I know without a doubt they'll always be in my corner. Then something unexpected happened. Gene's father reached out. He offered me a job at one of his friend's dental hospitals, saying he thought I was smart and talented. As flattering as it was, I turned it down. Working under that family would have been a disaster, and I'm determined never to tie myself to them again. Not long after, I actually ran into Gene at a coffee shop near my new place. He didn't look good, he'd put on weight, his clothes were wrinkled, and the shine he used to carry was gone. He tried to talk to me, apologizing once more, saying he missed me and regretted everything. He admitted things were falling apart at work, that his father was considering selling the company because Gene couldn't handle running it. He told me he finally realized how badly he had messed up and how good I'd been for him. I stayed polite but distant. I told him I'd moved on, that I wished him well, but I wasn't interested in going backward. Then I walked out without looking back. A small part of me felt pity, but mostly, I felt relief that I wasn't trapped in his chaos anymore. This whole journey has made me realize how much I've grown. I'm stronger, happier, and healthier without his negativity weighing me down. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but I know it was the right one. For the first time, I feel real closure and peace. Update 5. Now, a full year has passed since the wedding that never happened. I just went on my first date. It was casual, just coffee, but it felt exciting and a little nerve-wracking in a good way. I've been in therapy, and it's been a game changer. My therapist has helped me untangle all the damage from that relationship, rebuild my confidence, and learn how to set healthy boundaries. Most importantly, I've finally come to see my own self-worth. For the first time in years, I'm not just looking back at what I lost, I'm actually excited about what's ahead.